Welcome everyone. It was so nice to see so many participants of the COPs joining us today. And it's a great pleasure for me to chair the panel discussion, which in a way will start conversation on the concept of intersectionality, understood as a methodological, theoretical, but also as a policy perspective. And we definitely want to focus today on the last aspect, which is the policy perspective of applying intersectionality. And this panel is also very important for us because it marks the collaboration and knowledge exchange and knowledge sharing between the three COPs we have in our knowledge and support hub on widening participation. And we want to build on the insights already gained from the INSPIRE project. And this is why we send you before the meeting our working paper, which presents the main outcome and main findings from our ongoing works. And this will be in a way a starting point for a discussion we will have today, in which we want to explore what intersectionality means in Central and Eastern Europe and in Latin America, and how it can be understood and applied at the policy level. For our panel discussion, we have four speakers, and let me introduce our guest speakers in an alphabetical order. Our first panelist is Anna Knapinska, who is a sociologist and science policy expert working as the assistant professor at the National Information Processing Institute in Poland, in Warsaw. She's interested in the transformation of the Polish R&D sector and women's participation in research, particularly STEM. Her scientific interest is also reflected in the European project Gender Action Plus, in which she coordinates the implementation of a dashboard that contains interactive reports presenting statistics on the women's participation in the European R&D sector. And for many years, she has been a statistical correspondent for Poland in the She Figures reports published by the European Commission. Anna, welcome. Our second speaker is Gabriela Langhammerova, who is a gender equality expert and lecturer in the Center for Gender and Science at the Institute of Sociology of the Czech Academy of Science. Her field of expertise focuses on institutional changes and gender equality promotion in research and higher education institutions through gender equality plans. Gabriela is currently involved in the CHERA project aimed at supporting and educating of both scientific community and the general public regarding gender equality topics at scientific institutions in the Czech Republic. So she will bring another perspective, linking her academic knowledge also with the expertise from the policymaking position. Welcome, Gabriela. Dr. Karolina Lendak-Kabok is an assistant professor at the Faculty of Philosophy, University of Novi Sad in Serbia. She was a coordinator of the University Center for the Interdisciplinary and Multidisciplinary Studies and Research from October 2021 to September 2022. And currently, she temporarily stepped down from this position as she received the Marii Skłodowska-Curie postdoctoral fellowship. So congratulations on that. Her research primarily focuses on the status of ethnic minorities, language barriers, gender inequalities in academia, and ethnic intermarriages. Karolina, we are very happy that you joined us and that you will bring the perspective of the Balkan states to our discussion today. And Dr. Graciela Morgade is a professor and researcher in comprehensive sexual education. She's also a head of postgraduate studies on universities and gender policies and ex-dean and present vice-dean at Facultad de Filosofía y Letras, Universidad de Buenos Aires. Her research interests focus on innovation in epistemology pedagogy from a gender perspective in professors' training. She's also a member of the interdisciplinary research group focusing on the transformation in biology, philosophy, language, and literature in graduate and postgraduate training. And by applying a participatory methodology of research, this group works with different academic groups to promote the incorporation of gender perspective in program and classes. So Gabriela will focus mostly on the perspective from Latin America, and will share with us how the intersectional perspective is applied there. So please join me in welcoming Anna, Gabriela, Carolina, and Graciela. We are very happy that you accepted our invitation to join our panel and that you find time to be with us today. And as Eva mentioned, and the topic of today's meeting is intersectionality. And we decided to focus on intersectionality because this is the concept which is present in our research. And nowadays we cannot imagine conducting a research without intersectional perspective. But at the same time, this concept is deeply rooted in the Black feminism, and especially it is applied in the US and in the UK context. However, we can see that it has been applied very successfully also in other national and regional context. This is why we think that this is a kind of traveling concept which has undergone various changes in its meaning and has been adjusted to reflect the specificity of local context. And this raises two questions. The first one is about the meaning of the intersectionality. So Anna, Gabriela, Carolina, and Graciela, could you please reflect how intersectionality is understood and framed in your specific context regarding your country, region, or even the institution you are involved in? So perhaps Anna, could you start?
Yeah, thank you, Marta, and thank you for your excellent introduction. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. So thank you very much. If I wonder how we in Poland and how we in as an institution, a National Information Processing Institute, which is responsible for collecting and processing data on science and higher education, understand the term intersectionality, I have to admit that our understanding is much shallower than that described in the scientific literature, yeah, and mentioned in the first working paper sent to us. At the level of our country and science policy making, because we closely collaborate with our Ministry of Science, yeah, in some projects and some initiatives, I dare say that most often the people responsible for policy don't know what intersectionality is, don't have any associations with this term at all. And even when they have heard of it, they use it interchangeably with inclusiveness, diversity, equity, and so on. Yeah. So these problems with terminology is the first problem. The more informed people know about intersectionality and use the term when discuss inequality, the various social categories that blend together and result in inequality, but they very rarely reflect on and real problems that result from these inequalities, yeah, like this access to important resources or participation in power structures. So it's the first questions. The second one, I think that in country like Poland, where this anti-gender backlash is still very strong, yeah, even if now we are in a relatively better position with our ruling coalition, yeah, liberal parties than a year ago when the right-wing Conservative Law and Justice Party were still in power, yeah, but it's more difficult to consider inequalities within discriminated groups, yeah, for instance, among women in the science sector, yeah, because when we need to fight for women's rights in general, yeah, for equality for all women as a group, we recognize and I think that maybe it's sometimes even unconscious, yeah, to some extent, but we recognize that we should be united because pointing out differences between women, differences in access to power, which result from the intersection of different categories can be used against us. Yeah? So I think that in traditional cultures, this can be taken as evidence of conflict between women. Yeah? So maybe that's why in this working paper, national experts assess that at the level of political framework and at the level of organizations, yeah, it's they are so negative and clearly state that this adopting intersectional approach is highly insufficient. Yeah, so maybe yeah, my first thought on this.
Thank you, Anna. So it means that we have a very tough beginning, and let's just see how the situation looks like in our neighboring country. So, Gabriela. Gabriela? I saw her on the... Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, I'm sorry. Sometimes it just makes me trouble my earphone. So thank you very much for the interaction, and thank you, Anna, for a nice opening and kicking off of this topic, because I think it's very interesting and important what we're going to talk about today. So as Anna said, in the Czech Republic, the term of intersectionality is not embedded anywhere. It's just a topic of academic debate concerning specifically the area of gender studies or women's studies. Nothing else. It's not really widespread in the academic area at all. And I would like to say that from the policy making point of view, it is not just intersectionality, but also it's we are now at the times when the concept of inequalities, any inequalities, is hardly to grasp in the political area. So yes, that's it. So then, and as Anna said, I would agree with that. That sometimes it's hidden or window dressed by the efforts of diversity and inclusion coming from the corporate areas, but they are not understood the same way. And I think it's just a different concept which is embedded in a specific workplaces, like the private sphere and the corporates specifically, but not in the area of public research or research finding organizations and something like this. Speaking of any inequalities or intersectionality in the Czech Republic, and I think it's one of the heritage of state socialism, is that the standpoint when we speak about inequalities is that the state socialism policy tended to dissociate the normal from the others. So all of the inequalities on anything like this was unseen or made unseen on, and it was completely hidden. So last 30 years we're trying to reveal that was dug down somewhere and hidden in the cellars, and now we are digging it out, and we are trying to make some kind of policies that would be like that would make it equal somehow. And yeah, and that is like hiding the inequalities. I think there's a big influence of neoliberalism, like neoliberal policies in the 90s. I think it's the heritage, like making inequalities unseen and make them invisible. And there are a lot of people in the House of Commons, specifically between the politicians, who claim that differences or inequalities are natural and there's nothing to do with them because they always been here and so on. Speaking of anti-gender lobby, it has different forms and shapes compared to Poland, for example, because there are no violations to women's rights. Speaking about abortion rights, no one's considering them not normal, or no one's challenging them. Abortion rights in the Czech Republic are safe, but there's been a big debate about marriage for all. But it has shifted its standpoint, because I think it's very hard to assert that marriage for all is against or is something not normal. And I think there are many people in the Czech Republic, it's more than 2/3, they think that marriage for all should be normal, or that it's a civil right. It's just a civil right, it's a human right, marriage for all. And the politicians just shifted the standpoint from, okay, we are not going to talk about whether it is a human right because we cannot hold this position anymore. So they shifted it to surrogate parenthood. There's going to be a trade with kids if we allow marriage for all. And so now that's it. So there was a reading about this law, and it came with compromises. So it has different name and so on. And yeah, and there's also there are fights about Istanbul Agreement, like in other parts, because Czech Republic hasn't ratified yet. And yeah, there's been another fight about this. It was not ratified again. They were talking about it in Senate in January, and it has not been ratified yet. So we are still waiting. And yeah, and all of those policies are well fragmented in the Czech Republic. So there are special treatments for any endangered groups, and there is no mainstreaming standpoint, like to how to make them at one time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gabriela. I think that we have just started mapping the context, the broader context for the discussion on intersectionality in our region, pointing to concepts such as anti-gender lobby and gender wars, neoliberalism, inequalities, as linked with the discussion of the intersectionality at the policy level, but at the same time pointing also to other documents or regulation which can in a way support also the inclusion of intersectional perspective. And these were voices from Poland and Czechia. So let's move further. And Karolina, could you contribute to the discussion? Can you please let us know how the situation, share with us your knowledge about the situation in your context?
Thank you. And thank you for the introduction as well, and for the invitation. Yes, so today I'm representing basically the Eötvös Loránd University in Hungary, but my research I was doing and was very much connected to Serbia. And when I learned about intersectionality more than 10 years ago, when I started my PhD studies, which were from gender studies, it immediately dawned on me that this is something, this theory could be applied in the Central Eastern European context as well, even though it is very much rooted in the Black feminism and it comes from the US and it is a US-based theory. And what I also realized that when it comes to Europe, intersectionality was applied when it comes, for example, on Muslim women in Europe, and also a bit was done on Roma women. However, other minorities or minority women weren't really considered from this intersectional perspective. I also learned then that one of my colleagues did some research on Russian-speaking women, for example, in Estonia, but basically that was it. And then I thought, why not applying the theory on Vojvodina? So Vojvodina is basically the northern province of Serbia, which is home to still 25 minorities, national minorities. So basically, this is what I wanted to do to apply the intersectional perspective, or to apply the theory on three minorities living in Vojvodina, so the Hungarian, Slovak, and Romanian. I chose these three because those minorities have also the right for a mother tongue education, for example. And what I was interested in, how these minorities and women from these minorities can cope with difficulties, and how can they basically enter the higher education system and remain as academics in them. So this was my question. So where is a woman from an ethnic minority background compared to a man from the majority community? And this is how I wanted to basically apply the intersectionality. And this was my research when it comes to my PhD studies. And afterwards, when I finished this, I also had the chance to somehow apply this theoretical knowledge I gathered and apply. I wanted to give a chance to apply this knowledge when it comes to gender equality plans. So I was the one who so basically what I did was there's a working group I've led at the University of Novi Sad, which was to basically build up the draft of the gender equality plan. And here I wanted to now I had this his research, big research behind me, and when I wanted to apply and put in intersectionality in the gender equality plan, it wasn't so easy. I would say it was rather difficult to convince basically colleagues and people around me that this is something very important to consider. So I think we achieved to put in a bit of it, but somehow it still remained very superficial. And yes, all the things you said already, that there was somehow maybe not enough knowledge around it, and also it lacked, people weren't really aware of its importance. So, and that was the biggest challenge and difficulty, how to now, implement or somehow put intersectionality into a policy document. And, and even if it's in there, then how to apply it, how to measure the effect of its application, basically.
Thank you, Carolina. So we have another challenge in front of us: how to move from academic research to policy making, and how to convince those who are responsible for the process of decision making to include the intersectional perspective. Gabriela, perhaps you could. Graciela, sorry, perhaps you could comment on this from your perspective. Perhaps you have some positive experiences from Latin America.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and Marta, the organization of this meeting. Well, in fact, Latin America is a continent where there are and there have been different expressions of inequality. We think of ourselves as a colonial continent. We have been, we have the Spanish as a language that has been brought by the conquerors. So there are many experiences thinking the links between the different systems of inequality. We call now popular feminism. There's a new category trying to name the different expressions of struggles and demands from women. We have women fighting for the control of primary resources like water, or against pollution, or asking for food, mainly food and nutrition. So in the different countries of Latin America and different places, then inside those countries, there are different struggles. And that's a way of thinking I propose. We go from research to a theorizing, and we build theorizing categories, but then we go again to that reality, and those struggles and those categories are not working so much, so we have to build another categories. So it's a go and from bottom to top and from top to bottom, but always having particular attention to those struggles and the political expressions of those struggles. For instance, in our country, in Argentina, we have been leading 38 national encounters, big meetings of women. They began 38 years ago, and now they were called national women meetings, and now are plurinational because they have included or are trying to include the indigenous perspective, and there has been another strong discussion about LGTB and those identities have been fighting to be seen in the same struggle. What I want to say is that for us, intersectionality is a strongly political concept that is related to political struggles. In Latin America, we have, and Gloria that has that long experience from the beginning. You know, I have been one of her students, and I've learned from her very early that the link among the different universities of Latin America, Brazil, Peru, Mexico, Ecuador, Chile, Uruguay, those feminists of the beginning have a very early worked together. And I think although I agree that intersectionality is a sort of American theory, North American for us, for us it's North American theory, it has a strong potential, and it names many of the local experiences that we are going through. It is useful to think that sometimes in research we need to analyze, we need to divide, we need to isolate what we call the variables, no, the different determinations. But in the real ground, in the real field, they are all together. And if we don't think about them all together, we will fail to lead policies that have a real impact. Well, I think that's how we are thinking from it, and we are thinking from it from Latin America, and I repeat, with this strong struggle against colonialism, no? And just a little in this point, there are now also other groups fighting for being visibilization. For instance, functional diversity, and the cultural studies of are also struggling to be seen in this intersectional view, and because it's another system of inequality. So we have a class and economical, we have colonial and cultural, we have abilities, we have sex and desire as systems of inequality. Well, they are fighting to be altogether seen in the field, and I think that the concept of experience is a very fruitful concept to just to link all those intersectional inequalities. Well, I stay here, so.
Thank you, Graciela. I think that you pointed out a very important link, how we should look at the intersectional perspective as not only the concept related to identity politics, but also to link it more carefully with some kind of structural change. But what I also find very interesting in the input from all of you is a kind of discussion about the lack of intersectional perspective at the policy level, whether we can see that intersectionality has become also a buzzword for the policymakers, especially from the EU level. and that we can see that there is a strong push to talk about intersectional and to make intersectional policies, which is even visible in one of our deliverables written by Rachel, amongst others, which is a political recommendation, how to understand and include intersectionality at the policy level. And also how to frame it, because some of you talk about neoliberalism, but Graciela talked about colonialism, which is also present somehow in the discussion in the Central and Eastern Europe. So we can see how much we have in common among our free corps and among the members of our free corps. And Carolina, you pointed out so that's what is in the focus for all of us, because now we think how to make inclusive gender equality plans. And I was wondering whether all of you could expand a bit more about this kind of visibility and invisibility of intersectional perspective at the policy level, whether this is only the problem of lack of awareness, lack of knowledge, or whether there is some kind using intersectionality as a concept, as a name for the certain policies, or whether there is this kind of approach present, but without referring to the concept. And if it is used, I'm really sorry, I just need to get rid of my two girls. I do apologize for that. So whether when we talk about this policy level, whether there is a kind of reference to this intersectional perspective without naming it in this way. So if there is a kind of, approach which can be also visible in the gender equality plans, especially in the gender equality plans, which already indicates these different ways of approaching inequalities from this intersectional policies. So if you could move slightly from the policy level also to the gender equality plans at different institutions in your context. So perhaps we could start with Carolina, who pointed out these gender equality plans as one of the area where she tried to apply her research outcomes. Carolina, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Well, when it comes to my research, it came out that so women from national minority communities in academia are less aware of their gender than they are aware of their ethnic belonging, and that that is the one that category is the one which they put forward when they speak about any inequalities they experienced, or hurdles, or setbacks when it comes to their careers, for example. And what also came out that they are not really, they feel that they won't be able to reach, for example, decision-making positions within the academic structure, which is interesting when you think about gender equality plans and how to put forward this question in such a context. So basically, I suggested my working group members that somehow we include that we should consider the issue of national minorities and women, especially when it comes to national minorities, in the context of academia. And it becomes very interesting to somehow try to level up all the people working in an environment. And of course, everyone needs to have his or her voice heard. And this is when it comes to, for example, decision-making positions. It's not only, of course, to lead something, but also to put your perspective, in front and try to advocate for people who are less visible, who have less social power. So these questions were somewhere in that room when we were discussing how to proceed with the gender equality plan. But then it was always somehow suppressed because but we have to, why would we put forward so such issues, and we have other issues to tackle, so bigger ones. And somehow it was always sidelined, the question of intersectionality, as something which should wait for the future, because now we need to discuss other bigger issues. And so basically, I think that we still need time to realize that these questions are among us and we should tackle it. And I just came back from Canada, where a question of Indigenous peoples and intersectionality, basically, when it comes to Indigenous peoples, are very much people are very much aware of it. And this is something which they are constantly working on. For example, if someone who has Indigenous background applies for a job, it means that they are in advantage. They have this intersectional advantage, basically. So, of course, we can argue whether this is good for everyone or not, or who favors this or who is against. However, this is an approach, an intersectionality in applying intersectionality in the field, and basically really being aware of it. Whereas at least in Central Eastern European context, I felt that somehow we are still not ready for it, basically, what I felt. Even though I've already had 10 years experience when it comes to research in intersectionality. I had to explain it from scratch to everyone, like no one ever heard about it. But and this is something which changes, because I realized that my students, for example, now they are much more aware of it and they know about it. So basically, we are slowly changing these things, and I think young people are much more aware about intersectionality. However, when it comes to policy making and especially gender equality plans, I think that this is something for the future, at least at this point when we are speaking now.
Thank you, Carolina. So I'll pass it to Gabriela. Are we ready? Because your field of expertise is related to gender equality plans, and you are also involved and an expert at the EU level, monitoring gender equality plans. So are we ready?
Ready for what?
For inclusive gender equality plans, are they implemented in Central and Eastern Europe?
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I'm just. I meant it as a pun, but it was not a good one. I'm sorry. And it was like, how to say it? There are big differences. I think in the Czech Republic, because it really depends on a specific experience the institutions have with some kind of. And it's the way they perceive inequalities, whether they recognize them, and whether they are ready to make the recognition, like to fulfill it in some kind of policies, specifically in the gender equality plan. In the Czech Republic specifically, ethnically, Czech Republic is very homogeneous country. There are the like 90%, 95% of the inhabitants of the Czech Republic are Czech, and there are only like 3 or 4% Roma people. That's the only minority the Czech Republic has, and so it's very, very, very hard to grasp it, to reveal some kind of inequalities in the higher education and research and innovation education workplaces. But some kind of inequality which can be recognized very simply is the non-Czech speakers, because some workplaces in the Czech Republic are highly internationalized. I'm sorry. So there is a great amount of people from other European countries. So they may be 40% of workers which don't speak Czech. So this is some kind of like inequality or a difference which is visible, and the institutions understand that there is a need to translate the policy also into any other language than is Czech, and it also has a cultural influence that some kind of policies or measures which are considered normal, especially the area of gender-based violence and sexual harassment. Some people from other countries and from the Czech Republic consider them inadequate because their perception of standards in this area, standards of safety, are like higher, let's say. And yeah, so that's the way. So like make it more diverse and to acquire those. So but there are big differences because many I think it's a majority of the workplaces in higher education and in research and innovation are very homogeneous. They are mainly made of consistent of people who speak Czech and are from this area. And yeah, so and also it makes a big difference in the gender equality plans. Some of them are really I would consider them intersectional, really, because they're like inclining to this way. They are strongly influenced by this concept. They don't just call it this name. They don't just use this term, but they apply it. Like they like there's no veil of ignorance on their heads, and they try to change the perspectives, but it really depends on the workplace. And there are like I would say like 3 or 4 workplaces in the whole Czech Republic that have kept gender equality plans like this. So yeah, they are ready. Like 3 institutions in the Czech Republic are ready. The rest I'm not sure about it.
Thank you, Gabriela. So you mentioned that homogeneity could be one of the barriers preventing us from using an intersectional perspective. And when Gloria was talking about Latin American COP, she mentioned that it gathers institutions from very diverse countries with very diverse cultural background, structural factors implementing the situation in the countries, but also I guess that different organizational cultures. So Graciela, could you comment on the gaps in the case of universities gathered in your COP?
Well, we can agree that it's not intersectionality as a concept is not present, and maybe it's similar to the other experiences that we can find some initiatives, some policy initiatives that could be called as intersectionality. I was saying when we think intersectionality as a crossroad, as simultaneous systems that gather, and not one after the other with like a comma. This is worse and this is less worse, and that's simultaneous. So it's really complicated to think of a policy or projects, because as in research you have to isolate different initiatives and different instruments. So well, that's the challenge. I'd like to mention at least 3 different strategies. One, and I think Gabriela, I don't know if she has spoken about these, but as we call the quota policies. So you include, and you just say, well, I'm going to work for and 2 women, but we are going to include a quota of Afro-American indigenous, or that's a sort of, I would say, recipe. Then there are some language policies. Because language is maybe an obstacle for the studies, for the career, for the improvement in the career. So language policies, multilingual policies, including sign language for the hearing loss. I include the hearing loss or that disability as a language to include in the policies, and we find different instruments leading to or aiming to make those translations, and I think this is just a little point, but now artificial intelligence and different applications that translate at the same time. We are now in Argentina having Chinese students, and the teacher speaks and they have the translator at the same moment. So I think these language policies will be much improved by different instruments of the technology. And the third type of initiatives are the exceptions or the improvements. When you think that you are going to have a more open rules, for instance, for assistance or for the terms of for a different working paper. So when you make flexibilization of the rules, that's the ethics of care, I will say. Well, that's another way of thinking. The ethic of care, it's very abstract. That's why I say exceptions. You make exceptions in the rules. So I think at least these three types. I remember in the last meeting, someone said, well, what can we do? Well, I think these are different initiatives just to study, but we can do and we can propose to policymakers, and that have proved that are sensitive to these multiple differences that in the gender plans we can see. And just to mention, I think Anna is going to speak about this, but I think we have a strong problem with the way we construct the data for decision making. I think Anna is going to speak about this, but I agree that if we gather the data in a binary way, we are going to have binary data. If we don't speak about cultural belonging or identity, we'll never know who those people are. If we don't ask about ability, disability, well, we won't know. So, well, I think that's one of the keys for our plans, to have intersectional data too. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will pass it directly to Anna, since she was mentioned as an expert on data collection.
Yeah, what Graciela said, maybe I will start from some anecdotal example, because I agree that country's culture and approach to certain issues is important, and as researchers we know how important is to consider gender identity, or being a part of the LGBTQ community, and when collecting administrative data, this dimension is completely overlooked. But even when we try to capture this dimension through service, for example, it might be a problem because the lack of education and awareness. In my institute, when we conducted a gender equality audit using this GIM tool, as a part of the ACT project, now INSPIRE, some people marked a transgender past, for instance. However, when interpreting the data, we noted that it was probably a feeble joke, that privileged men with power in the organization marked this answer, And the question comes up: how do we interpret such data? How can we are sure that it corresponds to reality? and how to not to harm other people. Yeah, so theoretically we collect intersectional data, yeah, but its value, yeah, sometimes might be questionable. Yeah, so it's very sad, but as an institute responsible for collecting data, I believe that the data might be a solution, and data-driven policy making, should be implemented. Yes, so in Poland, universities and other scientific institutions are obliged to upload data to our systems on a regular basis. So we have data on gender, on age, on ethnicity. That is the country of origin that is a proxy for ethnicity. And in case of students, it's also information about the place of residence, yes, city versus village before entering university. So we might think that quite a lot of different data. This data is visualized in our system, shown in a clear and user-friendly way. And this year we would like also to give some experts' comments to different reports from an intersectional perspective, to highlight this interplay of gender and other dimensions. But I still think that deeper reflection is needed, and without that it's impossible to implement some changes at the policy level. Yeah, and sometimes we misinterpret this regulation, general data protection. Yeah, and sometimes we some people claim that it's not possible to gather some data. That's not true, but again, if we don't have some data on race, gender identity, and so on, we try to gather this differently, through conducting surveys, and even big surveys. Yeah, and we do that in my institute. We send questionnaires to all researchers, for instance, registered in our databases. But it's again, it's again negativity in this. Yeah, that the studies are commissioned by the Ministry of Science. Yeah, in most instances. And usually the letter of the ministry is attached to the invitation to the service. And generally, we know that in the group of researchers, the response rate is high, because we know when other researchers answer the questions, we know the importance of analysis, so we are supportive for other academics. But I'm not sure if sometimes researchers are ready to answer, for instance, the question about their sexual orientation or gender identity, even if the questionnaires are anonymized, but they know that we have some systems of collecting data. So it's the question of mutual trust, and they should trust us, knowing that we are a ministry-run institute. So it's again a question of some power and some and we know that is a risk that they, if they not answer the question, this lack of data can result in wrong decision. So I think this general trust is needed, and in countries like Poland, it's rather a low level of public trust. But I think we should try to do this and try to grasp some intersectional categories.
Thank you, Anna. So when talking about grasping intersectional categories, we started with a kind of connection to the historical development of the concept of intersectionality and how it was used or developed in the US and UK context. And I would like to end up also by referring somehow to these historical roots of the intersectionality. So when it was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, it was used basically to intersect gender, race, ethnicity, and social class. Nowadays, we have plenty of dimensions which are taken into account when we talk about intersectionality. Could you briefly reflect on the dimension of inequalities which are considered when intersectional approach is applied in depth or broaden policy making in your own context? Graciela, could you start?
Yes, and short, because I think I've been speaking about that all the time. If we think of intersectionality as the intersection of systems of inequality, I think it's a moving concept, and it has been focusing on and acquiring different dimensions of inequality, and because it's political, and we have political groups that fight to be seen. And in Latin America, I think that's the history, and that's why it's very strong in indigenous thought. But I think little by little we are going to have more dimensions. The problem maybe is that if we have so many dimensions, we paralyze to make decisions. And I also think as a researcher, as a practitioner, and as a political of a university, you should decide. Sometimes you have to decide, and you have to begin somewhere, some way, and with something. And because it's not always just the perfect thing. That's what I'm saying. So we have these COPs. All the people that are in the different community of practices are deciding or trying to influenciate those who decide. Well, let's keep this in mind, but let's not paralyze.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. Anna, from your perspective?
I don't know. I said some words about data, and generally that there are these dimensions which are included in at the policy level. So I think that maybe it's the similar situation to Czechia in Poland, that the question of race did not exist in Poland, but because Poland was racially and religiously homogeneous, and this homogeneity refers also to academia. I've checked it out that at Polish higher education institutions, only 3% of the academic staff are foreigners. So sometimes it's difficult to convince that this is an important issue. But I think that this question of age should be taken into account. I think that maybe in the academia, social class based on parents' education is one of the categories worth analyzing from that perspective. And but generally, maybe I should say something that I think that I noticed the big role of qualitative studies, and I realized that they are an essential source of intersectional data. But at the same time, as a researcher who works in the laboratory of databases and business analytics, I know that for policymakers, this quantitative data and administratively collected data are overarching. So maybe we try to try to convince that that we should gather this data. So maybe
Thank you. And Carolina, what is the main message you would like to leave to the audience to take away regarding the dimensions of inequalities?
This is an interesting question. Definitely, we are now speaking about different categories, not only ethnic, racial, and gender, of course, but there is the LGBTQ community as well. Also disability, which was very important, age as well. Social class, which is very important when it comes to academia. My research also showed how those women who are basically from the cities, whose parents are educated as well, have university degrees, have more social power as well. So basically, this was also very important. And just to say, an example, minority communities, as when it comes to Serbia, are not really based in Novi Sad, where the universities So this created again inequalities and also an intersectional perspective when it came to women. So yes, I would say that now we have more categories to count in when it comes to intersectionality, and to basically put them specifically in gender equality plans. Just not to just mention intersectionally broadly, but be very specific with it and try to, cover as much as or as many categories as we can.
Thank you. And I will pass it to Gabriela.
Okay, thank you very much. When I thought about those categories or axes of potential discrimination, which can be considered from the intersectional point of view in the Czech Republic, it might be in the area of research and innovation, gender and caring responsibilities, because those are the only, let's say, things that are seen in this intersection, because it especially concerns young people who like start to make families, and logically in those cases they are obliged or they have caring responsibilities, and those are the main axes of inequalities in the research and innovation area in the Czech Republic, especially the caring responsibilities, which end up or wind up in a very low representation of women in research and innovation at all. So it concerns more women, but especially young women at the beginning of their careers, or and there are also many measures how to fix it, so age, caring responsibilities, but they are not considered, how to say it, in intersection with gender. It's not really well grasped and considered, because it's like still fix the woman approach more than fix the institution approach, because it's more common that it's women who have caring responsibilities, and we always anticipate it's going to be a woman who's going to have caring responsibilities, not a man. And the third possible X of inequality, which can be or which is sometimes recognized or not, is language, as I spoke before, because of international researchers coming to this area and to this background. So those are those three.
Thank you. Graciela, Gabriela, Anna, and Carolina, thank you very much for your insights.